Okay, back and visiting with journalist Sherman Skolnick, whose 7-part series is up on the web at his own website, which is Skolnick's, with an S, report.com. This has a lot to do with Alan Greenspan. Sherman, tell us, for many people listening who don't know, really who Alan Greenspan is. How did he get to be in the position he is in now? Who put him there? And who is he answerable to?
Well, I think I'm not the only one. I bet you've had others on your show that have emphasized that the Federal Reserve masquerades as a U.S. entity. Somebody recently fell down on the stairs of the Federal Reserve and sued the Federal Reserve as a U.S. government operation.
Yeah.
The Ninth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals in San Francisco ruled that they could not sue the U.S. government because the Federal Reserve is not the U.S. government. The Federal Reserve is a private central bank which masquerades as the issuer of U.S. money. Anyone that looks at what they papered money they got in their pocket could see that it is a Federal Reserve note backed by nothing. Not gold, not silver, nothing. Just hot air. Some people go one step further and say that John F. Kennedy, as the president, wanted to issue direct U.S. money, $2 bills. Prior to '63, the $2 bills, which the media laughed at, were the only genuine U.S. money. It said U.S. currency across the top of it. And just a month before the assassination of President Kennedy, the president issued a directive for another amount, not a very large amount, of genuine U.S. money as $2 bills. He never lived to carry it out, although he entered the order in October of '63, a month before he was blown away.
When was that Federal Reserve Act passed?
Was passed on
1930 what?
Christmas of 1912, and the Federal Reserve is owned not by the member banks as they contend, but it is owned by the Rothschild family jointly with the Rockefellers, and they, as I say, they issue paper money masquerading as a U.S. currency. The Federal Reserve got started as a device to get the United States involved in World War II by financing Britain to fight Germany. And there's a lot to be said about that. In other words, they lured common people of the United States into that situation. By the way, if somebody wants the quickest explanation of why John F. Kennedy was murdered, I interviewed a former retired Secret Service official. I promise never to use his name, but he says that the real reason, the simplest reason for killing Kennedy is he was very charming, and for better or worse, he caused the feeling to circulate in the United States that the era of the common man has arrived. And that's a dangerous principle for the ultra-rich that control the mass media, control industry, control the oil business and everything down the line of major enterprise. That psychology that President Kennedy let loose in the United States. And nobody since that time has dared promote such a psychology because it's dangerous. Those that rule us by the bullet instead of the ballot, you get wiped out for doing it.
You know, the point you made about the Fed is common knowledge to many of our listeners, but I don't know how many of them have gone into their local bank and asked the people in the bank if they can explain what the Fed is. Most of them can't. They don't know.
Now, we have what purports to be the authentic handwritten notes of a senior official of the Treasury, the U.S. Treasury, Office of Internal Affairs, analyzing, and it's on your website, and in his own writing there, he puts down acceptance of value by former U.S. President of the United States, George By the way, George Bush, the former president, in these documents likes to be called with his, as if his first name is Spanish, Jorge, Jorge Bush. You know, there's a lot of connection between Bush, the Bush family, and Mexico. A bank in Spain, reportedly, that is listed here, Banco Exterior de España in Malaga, Spain, is apparently the recipient of these illicit funds. And I'm not the only one that now says that. There's a major Spanish magazines going to press with the same story. They've discussed this, the Spanish banks and the Bush family and the dope traffic in a major magazine in Spain a year ago. I recognize that people say, well, I didn't read it in Time magazine. I didn't read it in the LA Times. No, you didn't. But what's interesting about these documents is...
Now, these are legit documents. No question in your mind that they're
absolutely.
legitimate.
What is astounding, because there are some people have made sort of a blanket statement without specifics. The Queen of England is in the dope business. Well, here is a joint account of the Queen of England with George Herbert Walker Bush and his family. I mean, there's a direct connection there. And then when you piece it together with other information, as we have in our 7-part series, it tells an interesting story. And of course, we put in details that are known but seldom put in front for the public to consider. Zapata Offshore, which is a company created about 1959 by George Herbert Walker Bush, Reuters once carried a story that the American authorities were aware that these offshore drilling rigs, which are beyond the U.S. jurisdiction in international waters, are reportedly used for dope drops and contraband. In other words, planes and airplanes and helicopters come by, and the helicopters land there reportedly with contraband, dope, in other words.
Well, people have been talking about this for 25 years, yeah.
But there's nothing the U.S. can do about it, because these are beyond whatever you consider the 3-mile limit or the 12-mile limit of the U.S. jurisdiction offshore. And Zapata, originally Zapata Petroleum, and later called Zapata Offshore, is a George Bush company, and they're the experts worldwide, supposedly, in offshore oil drilling. The other thing is this. At the close of the Gulf War, well, first of all, I'm the one that did an exclusive story in '91 that ran in a conservative newspaper, Spotlight, on a little-known court case that I was the only journalist, I and my associates, to cover here in Chicago. It involved the secret business partner, as shown by bank records of a Chicago bank, a branch of an Italian bank. Saddam Hussein had a secret business partner. And after the hearing, and I was the only journalist there, I interviewed the participants who admitted what we had heard elsewhere, that the secret partner in the 1980s of Saddam Hussein, the dictator in Baghdad, was, guess who? George Herbert Walker Bush. Bush was reportedly involved as had a financial interest in American Lafarge, a French company with American units that reportedly made ingredients for poison gas and supplied them to Saddam Hussein. Hey, guess who was a director of American Lafarge? Hillary Clinton. You see, there are so many pieces of information that are necessary for the public to understand this overall picture. I'm one of the few that points out that Bill and Hillary Clinton are closet Republicans. Clinton does a lot what the Republicans want, and that's one of the reasons they didn't go ahead and remove him on after an impeachment resolution. And by the way, there's a program that has to be done about it. I happen to know a lot about how the Clintons and others blackmailed the key people in the U.S. Senate so that they didn't vote an impeachment removal from Clinton after the House voted an impeachment resolution.
You said on this program back then that your sources were telling you that the level of blackmail, threats, and intimidation around the time of the impeachment vote as high as they have ever been in the nation's capital.
Here's another sidelight that people should consider. What occurred just before the impeachment, of which the impeachment sort of diverted? Let's go back. The Watergate affair covered up what? It covered up and diverted the public from the oil fraud. Those that lived through that period, 72, 73, and 74, know what happened. There was a fake shortage of oil. The price of gasoline at the pump skyrocketed. The price of oil just before Clinton, at the time Clinton was impeached. But let me go into it after the break.
Hold on right there, and we'll pause. I remember as a very young man seeing those long oil lines, 72, 73, and the big oil crisis. Boy, they were lined up 20, 30 cars out in the streets. Okay, we'll pause and come right back with Sherm Skolnick in just a minute. Okay, we're back with Sherm Skolnick, whose website is Skolnick's Report. That's with an S, skolnicksreport.com. Okay, Sherm, go ahead.
Let me spell my name, Skolnick.
Oh, that helps, yeah.
Skolnicksreport.com.
Always tell them how to spell it.
This case in Chicago, I'm the only one that wrote about it, involved Saddam Hussein and his secret business partner, as shown by bank records, of which Alan Greenspan and the Federal Reserve Board got into the middle of it.
Well, we should remember also, too, that George Bush was the former CIA director, and Saddam Hussein was the CIA's golden boy during the 6-year-long war with Iran, and so on and so forth. And
in 1976, CIA Director Bush arranged to murder Saddam's uncle that was running Iraq, and installed Saddam, and he's still there. One of the reasons, it's very ironic and sarcastic, one of the reasons that they can't remove Saddam is he was created by the CIA. Saddam's half-brother in Geneva made a statement in the European press that if the American CIA ever kills Saddam, that records will be released that would require Bush to be sent to jail for treason.
You know, so many times...
The half-brother himself was assassinated recently. Here are the records.
Yeah, so many times...
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What's astounding about these records is they've got the undisputed coded authority number of A. Greenspan authorizing these 25 banks with their wire transfers up and back. Hey, we're not talking about $10. In some instances, there was as much as $10 billion at a shot. One of the documents we posted shows $25 billion. Up and back to the joint account of Bush and the Queen of England and stuff like that. The other thing that the Persian Gulf War in its simplest form, when you know all the details that we know, is a falling out of business partners. Here in the United States, there are ordinary things where business partners fall out. They beat each other up. There's a few examples where business partners shot each other. Yeah, it's an everyday occurrence. Yep. Here are two business partners that were sharing oil kickbacks from the weak sheikdoms of the Persian Gulf, had a falling out, and that was the Persian Gulf War in its simplest form. And by the way, the American press has ballyhooed that we didn't suffer many casualties. One of the great tragedies of this falling out of the business partners, Bush and Saddam, the United States, as a result of the 500,000 troops that were in the Persian Gulf, we common people have suffered casualties of 100,000 of our XGIs. Yeah, it's called. 15,000 have died already from the Persian Gulf War syndrome, and 85,000 are either debilitated or dying, and their wives, their children, even their cats and dogs have died. It's almost. And the Pentagon says it's imagination. It's in your mind.
I know. It's almost beyond belief. I've covered that story from the beginning, as have you. And
usually, in a full-scale war, there's 20% casualties. We have suffered 20%, 100,000 of our people. Yep. It's got to be put in front. Now, coming to the point.
Oh, people,
So,
Sherman, hold on. Sherman, let me ask you a question. Sherman, there's so many people who would say over and over again, you heard it, I heard it, how can they not take out Saddam Hussein, the new Hitler? How is he still alive? Well, the answer is?
He was created by the CIA like Castro was. You can't remove. A CIA creature cannot be removed. And the one that prevented him from being removed is his half-brother, who had apparently these records. Look, I've written seven parts of the story. If you think the series is finished, you're mistaken. I'm not finished with the series about Greenspan and Bush. I've only. You got to understand something about our group. We've been around over 40 years. Our group has got over 1 million documents, tapes, pictures, some of which we use on our television show, which is going on the 10th year. And I suppose that explains why I, as the chairman of the group, have an encyclopedic understanding of what went on over here. Now, here's a detail that apparently is involved with these documents. Money went from Kuwait through Arab Bank Corp, Monaco. At the close of the Gulf War, President Bush, General Colin Powell, and General Schwarzkopf received gifts in violation of the U.S. Constitution. None of the people read the Constitution. Article 1, Section 9 says that no person that is a federal official or has a position of trust under the U.S. government shall receive any benefits, emoluments, and so on from foreign kings and potentates. Here, the Emir of Kuwait, a form of king, gave $15 million in diamonds and golds and money to George Herbert Walker Bush, the president. Gave $10 million in gold, and this has been confirmed by others, to General Colin Powell, and $15 million in diamonds and jewels to Schwarzkopf. And these were all federal employees in violation of Article 1, Section 9, receiving benefits from a foreign potentate, the Emir of Kuwait, through apparently Arab Bank Corp, Monaco, which is on this list. Here, in the handwriting of the senior official of the Treasury Department, is a reference to a federal statute over and above Article 1, Section 9, forbidding this.
Another statute. All right. Hold on. We'll pause here at the bottom of the hour with Sherman Skolnick, his 7-part series up there for you, and headlines, and it's a major work. Be right back. And we continue with Sherman Skolnick, live from Chicago, who joins us once every 4, 5, 6 weeks to give us his most independent eye view of what's happening in this world, at least a little slice of it. And go ahead, Sherman.
By the way, some critics say, well, you're jumping on a Republican. Anybody that knows our work over the last 4 decades
jump on everybody.
That judges who were corrupt, that were Democrats, have been sent to jail by our work.
Right.
Judges who were corrupt, took bribes, that were Republicans, were sent to jail. We're independent. We don't take sides in politics or
Sherman,
philosophy.
Let me sidestep just for a moment here. We're in the middle of this political season. Your contacts in the monopoly press are certainly of long duration. What is the sense among the members of the press and the media about this particular season? Are they talking behind their backs about these things at all? Are they getting excited about it? I don't know how they really could.
No. Some of the most clever pundits that talk off the record to us on the promise that I never mention them by name, even if they work as a reporter in the White House.
Sure.
They believe that the two lead candidates will knock each other dead, and we'll have a series of scandals on both sides. And into the middle will come Pat Buchanan, who may or may not be accepted by the establishment, and you have to know so many details to sometimes understand what we're talking about.
Right.
In 1972, do people remember what happened? George Wallace was a third-party candidate, and he was running so strong that he was pulling in the polls 19% of the vote.
Just about 20%.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, it is a little-known principle or a provision of the U.S. Constitution. If none of the candidates get sufficient numbers under the electoral vote, not the popular vote, the so-called electoral college vote, which is really what decides the election, not the popular vote, then the election is taken out of the hands of the public and put into the House of Representatives.
Right there.
And the last time that happened was about 130 years ago. So if you want a quick reason why Nixon had a motive to have George Wallace shot and put in a wheelchair, there it is. By the way, we're the only ones that put a film documentary maker that interviewed George Wallace, who took his cigar and pointed to a picture of Nixon and said, "Conspiracy, conspiracy." We did a 1-hour show with that film documentary maker, which apparently was not shown anywhere else. So George Wallace, after the time he died, accused Nixon of shooting him to break the deadlock. In other words, if Wallace stayed in the campaign beyond May 72 when he was shot, neither one of the candidates, Nixon or McGovern, would have had enough electoral votes to swing it. Wallace would have tied the whole works up. So they shot him. I mean, that's a horrible thing, but that is apparently what happened. And so you ask what some of the pundits believe now. They believe, and I'm not a Buchanan supporter. I'm not a supporter of any of them.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying we may get tight. I, for one, believe that we're not going to have an election in the traditional manner. I've gone on my television show and said straight out that those that rule us rule by the bullet, not the ballot. That's a hard thing for Americans to accept, but they better think about it. They better think about it. Now, coming back to this thing here, since we have contacts with independent researchers all over the world, and if a story gets suppressed, even by a major news organization, usually the reporters that get it suppressed by their editor, they usually search out what they call a loudmouth that can get the story going somewhere else. Guess who that loudmouth usually is? Me. It's one of the ways why we get some of these very important stories. It got suppressed by some news editor. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
So now there are more details to the George Bush Greenspan thing, and we bring to it a encyclopedia knowledge based on 4 decades of work. For example, in January of this year, the one who reputedly is the Bush family cocaine bank money laundry wizard, Giorgio Pelosi of Milan, was arrested in Chicago. And only one newspaper did a watered-down story of it, the Sun-Times. Everybody else avoided reporting it like the plague.
Is he out now?
He's being sent back to Italy for prosecution. The other thing, another related detail, and I know some people are already boggled by all these details. I try to simplify it instead of making it technically complex. On your website is a series of stories we did about the corrupt IRS, which is related. Why? We identified a boat, an ocean-going boat that goes from Mexico to Caribbean to Spain and Portugal that apparently is involved with all this. And we even showed a picture on your website, and I think it's still running, of the boat.
Yeah.
It's who owns the boat? Former and current top IRS officials. Who did we confront with it? The Inspector General of the Treasury Department, who alleges he's investigating, but I don't have any confidence in them. I sent it as a matter of record. We did a 1-hour documentary about the boat in November, and a whole series of things have happened since that time. We try to pull together the details, not to fit a conspiracy theory, and we're not conspiracy theorists, but to make sense from a vast amount of information out of these things that are very often don't make sense. I mean, most people wouldn't know what to do about the wire transfer records showing billions being sent to the Bush account at the Arab Bank Corp, Monaco.
Yeah, Sherm, you've got all this evidence, documentation. You have exhibits that are up on the web. So what? What's going to happen? What's it all mean?
Well, let me tell you from 40 years of experience, usually what happens when the country as a whole goes into a financial tailspin, people suddenly wake up and start pointing fingers. When they're working, even on low-paid jobs, running from one low-paid job to the other, and eating 99-cent hamburgers in the middle, corruption scandals do not faze them. Usually, the best corruption scandals really, start going places in a time of financial torment. Only old-timers remember, like I do, the 30s. Financial scandals, corruption of judges and others, it was an ordinary thing in the 30s. Why? People had lost their wherewithal in the stock and bond market and so on, and they were ready to accept serious accusations against the higher-ups in the government. Now, and by the way, I started to mention earlier, at the time the impeachment resolution was voted in December of '98, the price of petroleum, of crude oil, was $10 a barrel. So while we're all busy with this Monica Lewinsky thing and all, what has happened in America? The price of crude has gone to as high as $35 a barrel. It went down a little bit. It's going back up. That is the crucial thing. Some believe that the Kosovo-Serbia war was to cover it up. So in that 14-month, 15-month period, oil has tripled. That is the crucial factor.
Okay, it's a web and a 7-part series from Sherman. Just a hint of some of the connectivity of all this is there for you right now. It's extraordinary. We'll pause and return in just a couple minutes. Okay, tomorrow night, Wednesday, Russell Card will be here. Russ, one of the legends in the sci field, remote viewing. He's fascinating, and it's always great to spend time with Russell Targ. Don Schmidt and Tom Carey will be here to kick the program off tomorrow night with that new Roswell witness that they have unearthed. He's 83 years old, I believe. You can see that story up in my headlines at around the 10th, 12th position, somewhere around there. It talks about what they were able to get from this man. You'll hear it straight from Don Schmidt and Tom Carey tomorrow night here, along with Russell Targ. Sherm Skolnick on for the last hour tonight. And if you have not read his articles, they are on his website, on my website. Read them and look for the data and see what you think about it. It's up to you.
Let me take a moment to give our address, as I promised at the beginning. Several times a year, we come out with a heavy packet of our printed stories, different stories that relate to some of the things we talk about on the radio. To get a heavy packet of our stories, printed stories, send $5 in a stamped, self-addressed, business-size envelope with 3 stamps on it to Sherman Skolnick, Skolnick, 9800 South Oglesby, Oglesby, Chicago, Illinois 60617. Repeat, a heavy packet of our printed stories, $5 in a stamped, self-addressed, business-size envelope with 3 stamps on it to Sherman Skolnick, 9800 South Oglesby, Chicago, Illinois 60617. If you haven't somehow written this down, we have a regular phone number that has a recorded message that repeats how to get our literature. And that number in Chicago, it's a regular phone number, not an expensive call, is 773-731-1100. 773, that's Chicago, 731-1100. Our website is www.skolnicksreport.com, and there was an S after my name, SKOLNICKSREPORT, like one word, lowercase, skolnicksreport.com. We get email, Skolnick at ameritech.net, AMERITECH, Skolnick at ameritech.net. And that's the ways in which we can communicate.
Sherm, let me say one other thing, Sherm.
And we don't pick politics. In other words, it's immaterial to us as to exactly who these Federal Reserve records point
Oh, no.
to.
You've never been part of
Some
them.
people says, well, you bring them out at a time that George W. Bush is running for president. We've been working on this for some time. To put together all these related details is not something that you can do in a minute. So
Yes. By the way, there are a number of articles appearing on the net now about this very thing that your 7-part series talks about. You are not the only one writing about this. There's some fine writers who have spent a lot of time trying to unravel this web as well.
You mean about the Bush family and the
Oh,
Bush
yes.
business?
Oh, yes.
One very good website, can I mention it?
Sure.
Is www.copversuscia.com.
Yeah.
It's a former L.A. policeman who has dedicated the rest of his life to fighting the dope business in the CIA. And his website address is COPVCIA, copversuscia.com. Mike Rupert has got some tremendously good items there. He claims that they've got circumstantial and other proof that Bush's sons used an airplane of a former dope trafficker that was assassinated, Barry Seal, who was tied in some way in with the Mena airport thing in Clinton, and that George W. Bush was using that airplane. If all that's true, that's dynamite. I mean, now you asked, when would something be done about all this devastating information? And my best guess, based on 40 years being a court reformer and fingering corrupt officials that later went to jail for bribery, I would say that when we go into a financial tailspin, this type of thing becomes more popular. I suppose from a cynical sense, if we want our stories to really go places, we should cynically wish for a tailspin. I don't know how else to explain it.
That's kind of funny.
In other words, your question is sort of resignedly you feel that nothing is going.
Well, you're chronicling all this. There are many other people. By the way, another outstanding website is steamshovelpress.com.
A friend of mine runs that, Ken Thomas, right?
Yeah, Ken's a great writer, and Uri Dalbenko is there writing. I mean, there's some of the stories on there now of fighting the Bush crime family. It goes on and on and on. Major stories, major research articles.
One of the things, we have two general policies of our group. The first policy is that I, as the founder and chairman of the group, am obligated to personally finger the corrupt judges to their face. No rumors, no poison pen letters, right to their face. And of course, the consequences are usually a jeopardy. The judges end up, and have done so 8 times in 40 years, sent me away to jail for contempt of court, not for committing crimes. And in almost every case, I was vindicated, and the judges ended up in prison. Our second policy is that we generally hesitate to mention our day-to-day problems with the judges and what they do to us to try to stop us. But some of that became so intense that recently we posted on your website and on my website a story about violence committed against our TV show. Some of the officials who are surrogates for Clinton, without a search warrant, seized the master tape of a 1-hour show we did about Clinton's corruption from Chicago to the White House. And we've got 5 cases pending about that, and they won't give us our tape back. And secondly, some of the underlings for some of these officials that we have fingered on our show sent an armed Gestapo-like force of 4 people, heavily armed, to force their way into an associate of mine that helps with our TV show. And they threatened to shoot his wife, who helps with our TV show. And they stole, without a search warrant, some of our tapes. I know some people out there that are maybe a little naive, maybe not that well informed. Skolnick, you got a First Amendment right. At the hands of corrupt judges and officials, I don't believe that our constitutional rights are worth anything. Do you
Not
agree?
much anymore, Sherm, not much. The Constitution is sort of a reflex in conversation.
And by the way, if you think that internet is beautiful, but then I posted a story, and I think you ran it, called Big Brother Internet. And I think it happens to you once in a while. But doesn't your show also go out on internet and so on?
Oh, yeah.
In an audio form or something?
Sure, live around the world.
Did it happen in one of our shows that just as you put me on the audio version, you got killed someplace on internet?
Yeah, well, these things, it could be the vagaries of the whole intricate process of bringing information out.
Do you know, though, that when I email you a really hot story, like about the Kennedy Jr. plane crash being bombed and all that.
Right.
It didn't go forward by email for 4 days. It got stuck.
Well, there are a lot of filters that these things go through, as you well know, and they can get hung up there accidentally or intentionally. Sure.
Now, some of my friends that are very cynical say, Skolnick, you don't understand. This internet thing is beautiful, but it's America's bulb. And it's getting brighter just before it's going to blow out. I hope that's not true. I hope that's not true, because internet has done wonders for the rest of us. We're hoping somewhere in the future to have pieces of our cable TV show go out by video streaming. We're trying to work that out. It has done wonders for getting this information before the public. And there's been the Federal Reserve and the rest of them have they didn't deny a single thing of things, because I think these documents are correct from the Treasury and from the Federal Reserve's secret wire transfers. I think they're all authentic, and I think it has put them all into silence. No one has stepped forward and says there's something wrong with these documents. We've gone through a lot of checking and double checking. And I believe the documents that we've posted are authentic. I believe that is the handwriting of a senior official of the Internal Affairs Office of the Treasury, with his notations in his own handwriting about the Bush family and so on. I believe that they're all correct, and they're... now somebody will say, well, Skolnick, you sent copies of this to the Inspector General. I don't trust the Inspector General.
It's an issue of trust that a lot of people share. Who do we trust anymore? It's
the common people of the United States.
That's right.
And a few independent-minded radio talk show hosts. The people shouldn't take you for granted, Jeff. I hope they contact their local facility and commend them for carrying this show.
Well, I hope they do too.
In some place, this type of thing is censored in some places. You and I know that.
Even if they disagree, they've got to stand behind the idea that this program has 40 to 50 guests a month on, an incredible amount of material, and sooner or later there's going to be something to offend most everyone. But that's the idea of a free forum. Thank you, Sherman.
Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Take care. Okay, folks, be back tomorrow night with two very interesting people, Don Schmidt and Tom Carey, and their new discovery of a new witness for Roswell, and Russell Targ as well, as we move through the week. Hope you have a good night's sleep and a great day tomorrow, and I'll see you in 21 hours.